Hello, everyone. I'll give everyone a moment to connect to sound. Hello, and welcome to the Brooklyn Rails 1258th New Social Environment. I'm Joshua, a Programs Associate here at the Rail, and I have the pleasure and privilege of being your MC today for a conversation featuring Christine Berry, Martha Campbell, and Jessica Holmes. And now I'll introduce today's guest and host. Christine Berry and Martha Campbell opened Berry Campbell Gallery in Chelsea in 2013. The gallery has a fine-tuned program representing artists of post-war American painting that have been underrepresented or neglected, particularly the women of abstract expressionism. Since its inception, the gallery has developed a strong emphasis in research to bring to light artists overlooked due to age, race, gender, or geography. This unique perspective has been increasingly recognized by curators, collectors, and the press. In 2022, Berry Campbell moved to a 9,000 square foot space, 524 West 26th Street, on one of the most prestigious blocks in Chelsea. Jessica Holmes, a co-editor of the ArtSeen section for the Brooklyn Rail, has also contributed to its pages for over a decade. Her writing has also been featured in Bomb, Hyperallergic, The New York Observer, Vanity Fair Spain, among many others, and has been included in over 24 exhibition catalogs and monographs. Previously, Jessica worked for the Calder Foundation for nearly 2 decades, including 6 years as its deputy director. And with that, I will pass the virtual mic over to Jessica.
Thank you, Joshua, for that lovely introduction. And Christine and Martha, thanks for being here with me today. And thank you to everyone in the audience for joining in. It's great to be back on an NSE conversation. Christine and Martha, I thought that we could get started just by introducing you a little bit more fully to people out there listening today. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your backgrounds and how it was you came to open up Berry Campbell a little over a decade ago.
Well, first of all, thank you everybody for joining us. I'm seeing so many friends and family and just wonderful faces. It's making me smile to see everybody. So thank you for joining today. Yeah, my first comment I would like to say is Martha and I started this gallery really on a shoestring. We're different than a lot of other galleries. My parents were teachers, I didn't really grow up around art. And so I had the good fortune of when I went to Baylor University in Texas, I took an elective in art history and it was 120 degrees outside, and I walked into this dark, cold auditorium. The lights went down, and there on the screen popped up a Vermeer painting. And they started talking about language and all that. And I was like, I don't know what this is. I'm going to do this. And of course, then my parents were like, what is that? What do you do with that? But anyway, so I ended up getting 2 degrees in art history and sort of came up and worked at the Modern Art Museum in Fort Worth under Michael Opping, who is friends with Huang, and really how I got connected to the rail, and just had a wonderful experience there. So that's really my background coming up.
Yeah. So, I had a similar experience to Christine. I went to college and I thought I was going to do the responsible thing, which was to take economics, major in economics, get a job on Wall Street. And I took art history as an elective and I loved it. And my parents were wonderfully supportive. And they said to me, I guess supportive in a way, because they said to me, well, look, major in art history and wink, wink, when it doesn't work out, then go get your MBA, but just give it a shot. And so luckily for me, I majored in art history, went and I knew there were a few things you could do with art history degree. You could work in a museum, you could be an interior designer, you could work in a gallery. And so after college, I got a job at the Phillips Collection, and then also got a part-time job as an interior design with an interior design studio, and very quickly realized I hated patterns. And so
that was true in her whole life, I'd say.
And I've only worn black clothes ever since then. So worked at a museum, and I was like, well, God, do I really want to go and get my PhD? Let me try to work in a gallery. And then so got a job in New York at Spanerman Gallery. And Spanerman was
Ira Spanerman.
Ira Spanerman, really, really research focused. And I love that because it was the fast paced of the gallery environment, but the research aspect that I loved. And so that's how it got started.
I would just emphasize, like, we've never worked at an auction house. We both came from museums, and I emphasize this because we missed that link in that hustle of just the sale. Obviously, we like to sell, but we come from wanting to learn, wanting to research. We really focus on exhibitions. I mean, when the pandemic hit, everyone was like, so you're going to close up the shop and you're going to private deal. And we were like, like we like doing shows and working with a group of artists that we feel like we champion.
And the discovery.
Yeah,
we like for us to discover ourselves. And
so we met. So I left the Modern in Fort Worth because I had to come to the big city. I came to New York. I worked at the Whitney Museum for 1 year. I ended up getting a job with a very wealthy person as, I'll say, curator. It was more like framing, assisting with loans. And then I had met Ira Spanerman, who the client purchased from. And I was there for 10 years. And then how long were you there?
I was there for 6 years.
So he was getting, he was like in his 80s, 86. And so Martha and I were just, it was a huge staff from what we're used to. There were like 26 people on staff. So there was research departments, archives departments, just
photography departments.
Yeah, there's six, maybe 8 salespeople. It was very competitive. It was cutthroat. So we kind of learned our teeth. Just talking about sales, it was rough. But Martha and I seemed to have a natural inclination. Like, we would do art fairs together, and we naturally, we didn't fight like some other people would, like, knock you out of the way to talk to a client. Martha and I seemed to know when to defer to each other. We really were a natural team.
It was a mutual respect that happened. And I was 14, 15 years younger than Christine. And a lot of people would talk down to me and made me feel like I was very lucky to have landed up in the job that I was, which, by the way, I was incredibly lucky and fortunate, and I don't know how it happened. But Christine always made me feel like I had talent, and I always very much appreciated that from her.
You know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So that was it. But so we were at an art fair, and it was sort of the year that Ira Spanerman was going to close, basically. And I will say, for the record, we were the 2 salespeople that stayed the longest. So we stayed to the bitter end. And we were at an art fair in Miami. And I said to Martha, you're much younger than me. I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe I'll get out of the art business. You go walk around and meet other dealers and go shake some hands and see what you can do. So she goes away for about an hour. And she comes back, and now I know to this day, she went outside and had a cigarette and came back. She did not go talk to anyone, but she came back and said this: I like what we do. I like the artists we work with. Is there a way that we can do this? And I had people in the past ask me to go into business, but I always was kind of like, yeah, so what? I do all the work. I know everybody. What do you do? And with Martha, we already had a natural sort of connection together, and she's younger than me. Guess who could do the website when we just started, and I would pick up the phone and say, hey, we're opening this gallery. Like, you should show with us. And so we just had a great balance, but it took us, I don't know, it was about 6 months in the brewing, and really, we're really conservative. There's like a conversation, like, are we crazy that we did, like, how did we come to this? But I think it was really methodical, and we are really methodical, and we figured out a way that we could do this not by buying Motherwells and Picassos, that we didn't have any money. We literally did not have any money. So we had to figure out, can we rent a space? We wanted to have shows, and we were used to Midtown, where we came from. And so we looked at galleries on the Lower East Side and also in Chelsea. Tribeca wasn't really happening at that time.
Yeah.
And
I mean, and I think we came from a ground floor retail space in Midtown, and that's what we knew. And we, as Christine said, we had no money. And we were presented options. One option was 3,000 square feet, actually beautifully done on the third floor. The other option we had was 900 square feet on the ground floor, sublet from another gallery.
like a shared space.
Yeah, a shared space.
It
But
was
it was on
railroad.
24th Street, right in the middle of the block.
Mhm.
And we just, at the time, we always had like these hunches, and we thought, well, if this gallery is subletting half their space, they must not be able, they're having money issues. And my God, if they have money issues in 2 years, maybe by that point we'll have enough money and we can take over the whole space. And honestly, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
We ended up buying them out of that space and taking over. So by the time we actually had enough money to have the 2,000 square feet, we just kind of gradually moved in and took over that space. But we started really small. But we always, I remember people coming in and saying, this gallery is so dingy. You guys need something better.
Like,
but
you have this great art and you're in this space. I think Phyllis Tuckman, our friend, came in and we had a Darby Bannard show up and she was like, how did you get Darby Bannard? How are you showing Darby? We love Darby. And no one's seen Darby, but that's what we were doing. Like, Darby really wasn't showing that much at that time. So we could sort of pluck out these greats from history. And that really goes to the research part, I guess.
Yeah, all we really saw, we actually did not focus on the space. We just saw the art on the walls and knew we had to be ground floor retail to get new customers as a new gallery. And, I think, I was young and naive and stupid enough to think, all right, we're going to open a gallery and this is going to work out. But it actually ended up, it ended up working out.
We got our confidence together and and so getting to the point really about artists, as I always say, there are so many good artists in this world, so many. For all the people that talk about bad art, there is so much good art that it is painful to us because we see so many artists that we want to work with and just don't have the capacity. But 13 years ago, we were making calls to people. Would you like to show with Berry Campbell? And at the time I think at one point, I think with Eric Dever and Ann Purcell and some other people, we literally sent them a letter and said, we're going to have a gallery in Chelsea and it's going to be on the ground floor. Like, we didn't even know, we didn't even have a space.
Yeah, and it's going to be fabulous. And and
we would like you to show with us. Could we meet you?
They
did.
They signed up, like the William Perry Rudolph estate in Canada.
Some really great people that we had worked with. Karen Wilkins, some people like called in favors for us and said, these two are really good. You can ask Mike Solomon about Sid Solomon. Mike Solomon figured out at Spanierman that Martha and I were selling all the paintings. So while it was someone else's name on the door, we were actually hustling and doing the business. So that really was looking back, it was a really wonderful time because we had an opportunity to sort of create a roster of artists, of people that we wanted to work with. And, we knew we weren't going to be stealing people from other galleries. That was not going to happen, but that allowed us to do the research, I guess, that we are known for.
Christine and Martha, to touch a little bit more on your research focused way and that you built the gallery, perhaps you could tell everybody about your endeavors into the archives of American art, because it's really just kind of to me, an exceptional story and not one that you often hear from the commercial side.
Yeah, well, I think, when we started out, we both loved, or we both still do love, abstract expressionism. And we knew that we were not going to be showing Jackson Pollock and de Kooning and, even, people like, the second tier abstract expressionists. And so what was being presented to us were the C and D list male artists. And we just thought, my God, there has got to be something else out there. Like we set out to show good art. We are going to show good
And
art.
good art, we know it. So you go ahead.
Oh, so, we went down to the Archives of American Art. We looked online at the Archives of American Art. We went up to Buffalo. We pulled Martha Jackson's records. We pulled at the archives. We pulled Betty Parsons' record. We basically pulled every great dealer's records.
And every book, we pulled out every exhibition catalog we could get our hands on, and we literally circled the names that we did not know. And it's really hard when you're reading, you go to the names you know. It's like like a switch in your brain so we would circle these names. And I think, and then from there, the step is, okay, well, is there artwork? Are these people making? Is there anything around? And I think what some art dealers do is just sort of Google online, they see one bad work that comes up at auction, and that's what you're making judgment on, which doesn't seem to make sense. If you're in this exhibition in 1955, there must be more to this story. So we then would this was kind of before everything was online. I mean, you would find, Martha was really good at finding like the family members. And she would
whitepages.com. I would look and so we'd find the artist. Then I would look at the obituary. Then obviously the husband had died. Maybe even the son or the daughter had died. And then you have to go find the grandchildren. So, it was, we were researching the archives. We were, stalking the families deep into generations.
And there was no email. I would just like to say this because this is hard, but I can do it. And I have worked political phone banks before, but she would literally give me the phone number and I'd like take a deep breath.
Well, because
and be like,
not online.
It's not online. And it's like, how do you express that? I know, but you know what, more often than not, I would say who I was. And I'd say, I know your grandmother was an important artist in the 1950s and 60s. And I just wanted to see, we're interested in maybe showing the work. And most people, when I said that, they say, my grandmother's work, like shocked, or they'd say, oh my gosh, my grandmother was so important, so generally people were so thrilled to talk to us and so thrilled that somebody actually figured it out. And so that really just started building on itself. But I would like to also say, because I know now we are known for women artists, but we have always said underrepresented, people that have been known and forgotten. So, somebody like Darby Bannard was somebody that was really important in one of our great shows. I think Phyllis maybe reviewed it in Art Forum.
He was in every major museum show in the 1960s.
Like a great color field painter. We also show Dan Christensen. These artists are our bread and butter, and they were known in the 60s, but styles changed. So what I think for Martha and I, and again, this might go back to us being crazy, but we don't have fear. If we believe in the artwork and the artist, we have no problem presenting it because we're like, no, let us show you.
Yeah.
Let's show you how good it is.
I like to say, in terms of the artists that we show, we believe in the artists from the beginning of their career to the end of their career. And I think some of these artists who got left out of the dialogue, like Darby Bannard or Dan Christensen, they changed their style. And so when a dealer only shows one period, you're saying that the rest aren't any good? That makes no sense.
Like, how do you believe in an artist if you don't understand why they changed?
And some of our best shows have been the ones where we've shown the off period, like Yvonne Thomas. We did a show of the 1960s, and Roberta Smith raved about it. Same deal with Ida Kohlmeyer. Roberta Smith raved about this period of work that had never been shown, never been seen before. I think going back to the women too, I think, we've become known for these women artists because nobody was showing these women in 2013. So we were going through and scooping up these women's estates, and we're thinking, oh my God, why aren't people showing these works? And it didn't occur to us people weren't showing them because they were women. We just thought, we have an insane artist roster. Look at these paintings. Look at these shows our artists were in. Look how full these estates are. Look how we can boost the market with these really full estates. And they were passed over because they were women. That's it. That's the only reason. And it was crazy
the
to
art
us.
is so good. I mean, we did so many shows, and I will say in the beginning in 2013, in those early years, we had trouble getting press. We had trouble getting people to see the shows or maybe even write about it. Maybe it was abstraction. Maybe it was a little out of it at the time, or they didn't know who we were. I mean, I'm grateful for any writing and any review anyone ever did for us then, because it was simply because they saw the show and felt inclined and saw what we saw. I mean, we really hunted down the street. And I will say, there were days where I would be sad that we did a Charlotte Park show once, and it was like her A+ 50s paintings. And I said to Martha one night, I was sort of locking up, and I was like, nobody's going to see this. Nobody's going to see this. This is a museum show. It should be in, but the one thing I can say, sometimes I have sad days about it, but I would go lay in the bed at night and know that we were doing something worthy and that Charlotte Park was deserved, and we can feel good about what we're doing at the end of the day.
So we did a show that we were really proud of, not only aesthetically, but also, re-promoting this artist's legacy who had a fascinating story.
And just to say, because I know it's hard being a gallerist, and it's hard. We have been fortunate to have clients who believe in what we do and are surprised and excited by the artists that we bring to the table and sort of review and bring back their work, and they buy from us. So I think we watched a lot of galleries when we started that would sort of put something up on the wall. If it didn't sell, change the entire style, go to something else. And I think we have stayed consistent since day one. Every single one of our shows we're proud of, and we never kind of went off course. We stayed true to what we believe in and the artists we believe in. And I would only hope that encourages galleries to just sort of stick with it and have a voice and have a view, because now people are looking at this niche market, they call it, that we're in, but it wasn't really such a business decision. We were just really looking at good art and good artists. And even if we didn't sell that Charlotte Park show, we did another one in 2 years. If they're not going to see it this time, they're going to see the next one we do. And now they do.
Martha, I wonder if we could come back to something you just touched on a minute ago, which was artist legacies. I imagine that the two of you must have tremendous insight into the legacy of an artist. And I wonder if you could talk about what it is that makes having a legacy so important, both, in terms of an estate after the artist is gone, and for artists who are, presently working. What should you be thinking about for the future?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I think it's so deep on so many levels. To have a legacy is as an artist, I can only imagine that you pour every single ounce of yourself into these paintings. And that without this legacy, when you die, these paintings are gone. They're tucked away into storage. They're sold off, sitting on somebody's walls. Nobody remembers who you are. And so by recreating these artist legacies, you honor their life, you honor their spirit, you honor their vision, you honor their voice. And I think what's hard for us is because we're dealing a lot in abstract expressionism. And by that, I mean, a lot of these artists were born in 1905, 1903, 1913. By the time we got to them when we opened our gallery in 2013, they were already gone. They had already passed. And so we're doing this for the family to say, look how amazing your mother was. Look how important she was. Look how other generations that she has influenced. And it's very rare that we get that opportunity to do it with a particular artist. So one artist who was still alive when she was put back on the map was Judith Godwin. And it was amazing because when we first started, she would cry and say, nobody cares about me, nobody remembers. But Martha
she'd
and
say,
Christine,
I was so important.
yeah, Martha and Christine, look how good my paintings are. Why doesn't anybody care about me? Why doesn't anybody show my paintings? And we'd say, look, Judith, we're going to get you there. And by the time she died, she had been in the seminal show Women of Abstract Expressionism at the Denver Museum, which is the show, the one show that put the women back on the map. Only after that did MoMA do Making Space. Only after that did Mary Gabriel write the Ninth Street Women. And only after that did people actually care about those women. And Judith, after that show, was in a slew of shows. Her work was bought by the National Gallery, was actually put up,
It's
hanging in
it's
the National Gallery.
I know.
And so,
she would, I mean, and we got to hear you know, the thing about having Judith with us is that she could tell us her stories. I mean, you know, she was kind of funny, even though she would say, how come no one knows? She would sometimes be like, you know, Christine and Martha, I used to show with Betty Parsons and now I show with you. Like, just FYI, I'm making you important. And we were like, yes, Judith.
yes, Judith, we appreciate it. And she was, I'm just looking at this picture of Judith. She was I mean, look, Judith was tough, but in the most charismatic way possible. I mean, there are not many people who can hit you with a cane. You're like, I got hit with a cane by Judith.
Like,
you know,
kiss you on the lips at the same moment she's whacking you with a cane. You know,
she was the best, and and she would recount stories about Betty Parsons, having picnics with Betty Parsons, Hans Hofmann, instructing her.
Yeah, she would, you know, for us, we sit here and we like spout off facts. So-and-so studied with Hans Hofmann. She literally would say, Hans Hofmann helped me paint this painting. He was so amazing because he showed me this. I mean, we were hearing it all. She would talk about Dorothy Miller. She was great friends with Dorothy Miller at MoMA, like things that I mean, of course, my one story is one night we were out to dinner with her and I finally was like, I'm going to record this. I'm going to record this. And of course, I'm so old school that I thought I pressed record. I continued on to drink several glasses of wine, only to realize that I did not press record. So anyway, I said to Martha, I hope you remember that because you know what? It was really the spirit of we just got to commune with Judith. And we talk about the Cedar Tavern. Judith would tell us she was a lesbian. She had her own money. And she would say to us, you know, I'd go to the Cedar Tavern and the guys would come up and try to hit on me. I wouldn't let them buy a drink because I had my own money. I wasn't interested. They never knew what to do. You know, they'd walk away.
Yeah.
But then she'd say, Franz Klein was always nice to me. Franz Klein would invite me over to his group and I would go sit with Franz Klein and they were good friends. And you can certainly see the connection in their art and basically shared a studio until he passed. But anyway, it's for us to have those real stories at that time were just so incredible. She was quite a woman. And now so many good things are happening. She's being shown in Europe and traveling museum shows, but she did get to see it. So we're very happy about that.
So I think in terms of, you know, the legacy, for us to have actually seen what it meant to an artist for their legacy to be re-promoted and for their legacy to be established, we hope we can do that same honor for these families, even though the artist isn't here.
Right. And, it's wonderful to hear your story about an artist that you did get to work with while she was still living. And I know that the estates that you represent garner a lot of attention, but you do have among your artists who are currently, living and working and still quite active. Would you like to say a little something about some of those who are in your stable?
Yes, we actually support contemporary art too. And we have wonderful contemporary artists that are showing all over. Nanette Carter currently has a solo show at the Wexner. Beverly McKeever's in a show in Michigan. Mike Solomon's getting ready for a show in Sarasota. Eric Dever. I mean, our artists, we have an active roster of artists that are showing and we exhibit here at the gallery. And in that case, I feel like these are artists that we feel are akin to our program, that we feel have a connection to what the estates that we show and sort of carrying on the tradition of what we do in a contemporary way. So we really do a lot here. It's not just about the estates, but here's Nanette here. Nanette's everywhere. Nanette's all over the place. We're thrilled for Nanette. But Nanette, I will say, has been showing for many, many, many years. And she has a resume that's 10 pages long. She taught at Pratt for 25 years. It's timed. I'm not going to say overlooked, but kind of overlooked. Like a lot of group exhibitions, but now she's having solo shows internationally. She was shown in Venice. So it is, I think as all artists know, it is hard to build a career. It doesn't happen a lot of the time, just like poof, everybody knows you. It literally is a lifetime of making and hard work, and hopefully people recognize that.
Mm-hmm. And Christine and Martha, when you're thinking about considering representation of an artist, whether it's an estate or a living and working artist, what are some of the things that go into that decision-making process for you both?
I think first of all, when it's an estate, you need to make sure there are enough works in the estate in order to support rebuilding that artist's legacy. You cannot tell the artist's story with 5 paintings and 100 works on paper. As much as we would like to, you can't do that.
You have to be able to do shows.
You have to be able to do shows. And look, we've got to keep our gallery doors open. In order to do that, we have got to elevate these markets. And you need a certain something to work within the estate. Or, research is really important to us. And people say, look, how are you pulling these artists out of thin air? We're not pulling them out of thin air. They were in the best museum shows. Their works are owned by every single major museum collection. So we're looking very much at their resume. We're making sure they're actually in one of these books you see behind us. So we're looking at the depth of the estate. We're looking at their CV. We're looking at books. We're looking at catalogs.
And then I'm going to say this, because now we have the luxury of what is interesting to us.
Yeah.
So maybe in the beginning we were trying to fill some gaps, and now we have the luxury of what excites us. So we just started representing Marianne Unger last year, who's a sculptor, like a little bit outside, a little bit more forward in time than what we're normally showing. We loved her work. We loved her story. And so I think that's a bit of it now. And when we moved into 26th Street, our first show was Elizabeth Osborne, who is known as a figurative representational painter. And there were a few people who gave us a little trouble. We're like, this is not what you do. You can't open with that. Here she is. And we said, we love the paintings. Why not? So we now feel we have the luxury of that. We don't have to be sort of put in a box. For a little bit, it started to feel like we were falling into a box and everything had to fit into this box. And now I feel like we can move forward. We just announced the representation of Louisa Chase, who is a neo-expressionist, like Elizabeth Murray in that time period. And she's incredible. And so it's like we get to sink our teeth into something new. And when we represent an estate or an artist, we literally get to go in and see every single painting. And this can be 1,000. And our little minds churn and think about, it's really becomes, we're so not business oriented that we have like a strategic plan, like we can use those words, but we are formulating a plan in our minds of, what would the first show be? How do we present this to, who would be the best writer for this? And then what would we do 2 years later if we had the opportunity to show that they were doing XYZ? So, we're really sitting in a good spot right now. And it feels really good to just be able to expand our roster a little bit.
Yeah. And I think, what we look for within an artist or an artist estate is first and foremost, do we like the paintings?
Yeah.
And then can we tell, and sculpture, and then can we tell this story? So absolutely.
And maybe you could talk a little bit as well about your curatorial approach. I find a very high quality of curation across your shows.
Well, I think we didn't I don't know if we didn't realize, I do think this comes maybe a little bit from our museum backgrounds, and I'm going to chime back to Michael Opping here because I am grateful to him. When I was at the Modern in Fort Worth, I was, in the exhibitions department, and he would be hanging shows of Arshile Gorky or Susan Rothenberg or Garrett Boslitz, and he'd literally let me stand by his side. And I watched that process, and I watched him hanging shows, and I guess I went to straight art history school, so it was not curatorial studies at that time. It was just art history. So watching that in action was so exciting. And I think I learned about the editing process as well. Like maybe that painting doesn't go in the show. And and that's hard with contemporary artists today, but maybe that painting doesn't fit in. And he asked me questions. Sometimes he would say, what do you think about that? And I was not, he's a very down to earth person. It wasn't scary. I was able to answer him. But I will say, when I went to the Whitney Museum, I once piped up to a curator you all know, and I was pulled aside and told never to make a suggestion to the curator. And so it was such a different experience. I mean, it was great to learn both things, but this is why I say I am very grateful to Michael Opping for that. So I think Martha and I both just, Irish Spanierman was really good about making us point people to different artists. So you became the expert and you would sort of hang the show or discuss. And so I just think it takes practice, but I also think we're pretty good at it. And I think we might have an eye, whether people want to some people are weird about it, but I think we just kind of naturally get it. And we know how to make things flow.
Yeah. And I would also like to say, I think that's the benefit of believing in an artist from beginning until end. And so we take on a new estate. Do we say, is this an artist where we should present a survey of works and introduce the artist to them all at one point? Or should we start with this one period and do it that way? But because we believe in the artist from the beginning to the end, it gives us great flexibility in terms of what we're working with. And then I also think in terms of both galleries that we've had, I mean, I know our first gallery was a railroad, but it did have different rooms. This gallery also has different rooms. So it does give you that ability to really curate the show, whether you're doing a retrospective and you need to show the 1950s in the back room and the 1930s over to the left and the 1970s. Yeah, exactly. Or whether you want it to flow seamlessly and do, one painting on, a 50-foot wall. It allows you that flexibility.
It's one of our favorite days at the gallery. I say putting the puzzle together.
Yeah.
When an installation day is putting the puzzle together. And I love that more than anything.
And I think the thing is, there is absolutely no formula. Everybody does these maquettes and, places out. We have tried to do that. What we tell our art handlers, get every single painting out, and they hate us. And I love it. They hate us. Get every single painting out here, and then we start the editing process. You take this one away, you put this one back.
And then inevitably you end up with what you already started. But that old school process, you cannot tell from a picture, even if you've seen the painting, and then you see connections that you never saw before.
Yeah.
Even if you're doing a catalog. Oh, can I talk about catalogs?
Yes, that's actually what I was going to ask you about next. As a writer, I appreciate them. So please tell me about catalogs.
I keep joking now we're in the book business, and I'm getting such pleasure out of this. We always, from our first show at Berry Campbell, had some sort of printed matter. And we even in the beginning paid for offset lithography.
From Meridian.
For a postcard. For a postcard, we would pay like thousands of dollars to have and people would say, this is the most beautiful postcard I've ever seen.
How do you get the colors so accurate?
We come from this old school sort of mentality. And it's so much fun now because in the beginning, we had to do these sort of smaller folding brochures. But the idea was you walk into the gallery, you've never heard of the artist. What we wanted to be able to do was hand you something with pictures, not just a press release, but like pictures. So from the beginning, we've always had some sort of printed matter. And now we are doing here's the picture of the books. Like we're actually doing we did a hardcover book for Judith Godwin, 100-page. And this allows all the research that we were doing that was kind of just going into nowhere we're sending to clients is now accessible in our books. And we have original research for every single, John Yao wrote for us for Bernice Bing. Like, it's the greatest essay. He was the perfect person to write for us. And so we have the opportunity of sort of marrying the writer to the artist too, to figure out who's best to write. And now that Bernice Bing book is being sold in museums around this country.
But I would also like to say that, because nobody cared about a lot of these women for so long, a lot that was written on them were anecdotes or a story of a story of a story of a story. And so these histories were convoluted, they were inaccurate. And so we hire these researchers, we hire these PhDs to work with our archivist who goes down to the archives of American art. We owe everything to the archives.
Yes.
If you guys haven't
Yes.
if you guys haven't figured that out, to do primary research, primary source research to get these stories straight. So then we can accurately retell their stories.
And to your point too, I mean, because these artists were so often overlooked and there is no literature on them, you're really making a contribution to future scholarship by producing catalogs that are accurate, that are well put together, that have good pictures. And I think it's it's an art a little bit that's being lost right now.
It's a baseline. You're right. It's absolutely our books are like a baseline for the next person to come. And there you got the basic biography and the basic facts, and then people can build on that.
Yeah, I mean, the story of each and every one of these artists is so interesting. And when you couple that with great art, I mean, that you cannot go wrong with that formula.
And just to sort of switch gears a little bit, because we were talking about this earlier, I thought you might like to mention to the audience the work that you've been doing in the last few years with visual aids.
Yeah, we're so proud. We, visual aids is like an institution. Postcards from the Edge is like one of the greatest art events, a great charitable event. And I don't know, several years ago, I was having lunch with my friend Esther McGowan, who was running visual aids. And I literally was nervously said, we would like to, now that we've moved into this big gallery, would you consider us to host Postcards from the Edge? And she was like, really? Yes, we love your space. Robert Miller used to do it. And so we're just, I used to line up outside of Loring Augustine before it was online. And I would, stand in line for an hour so I could run in and buy the postcards I want. So it's really our way. In January, we give the gallery over to Postcards from the Edge. And, the postcards go up and there's famous artists mixed in with all the other artists, and you can buy for $100 and you don't know what you're going to get. And it goes to such a great cause. And we love our friends at Visual Aids. They do great work. And we just want to support, and it's a hard time for them now. And so definitely please join us in January. The party on Friday night is the best party in town. I mean, it's the best party in town for sure.
I mean, we could hardly squeeze ourselves into it, and it's space. So, And
it's just so fun. And they sell out the postcards. Yeah. There's great art. I always learn several new artists. We joke that we owe our paychecks at the end because we buy
we
so
do.
much art.
I know.
But please join us in January because it's really a wonderful event, and that, we love working with them.
Yeah. And I thought since you're here today, we should definitely touch on the show you opened the fall season with, which is Mercedes Matter, an artist that I have long admired and, in keeping in step is someone who's long been overlooked. Would you like to tell us a little bit about this show and how it came together and your ideas for it?
First of all, thank you, Jess, for your fabulous review in the Brooklyn Rail.
Indeed,
that means a lot. So,
and you captured it perfectly too.
Yeah, you know what you're talking about. So
yeah.
Thank you. You know what you're talking about. I'm glad someone does. Well, Mercedes Matter is one of, we work with a lot of estates, and this estate of her work was kind of elusive, I'll say. And we had wanted to, we always talk about Mercedes Matter, and we've had some secondary market works with her. Some shows are easier to put together than others. Like Bernice Bing, even though we represent the estate, is more difficult because there's not a lot in the estate. So this estate is intact, but we had to really work on putting this together. And Mercedes Matter, many of you may know her. If you don't, she is someone who was a founding member of the American Abstract Artist Group. She was in the 8th Street Club. She was one of the 3 women who were allowed to vote in de Kooning's club. She was the founder of the New York Studio School, and her principles are still in action today. So like, these are, just a few things. Like, how could this be, if this was a man who did all these things, he'd be at Hauser and Wirth.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. But seriously, exactly.
Seriously. But so anyway, we decided she was somebody that we liked the whole body of work, and she had not really shown in New York. I think it's been about 20 years. There was a show, was it Baruch College? And so we just thought, you know what, it's time to have a little regroup. Let's do kind of a mini retrospective. So we go all the way from the 1930s until the 1990s. We don't have tons of space. We have a good amount of space, but I think you can get the idea as you walk through the show. And we feel so fortunate. The New York Studio School has been a great partner. They just had a group of students visit us, and they talked. There were a couple of students that actually had her as a teacher in the 60s. So they were recounting their stories about her, which is fun for us. Because again, we're talking art history, bullet points, and they can say, oh yeah, she was tough, or God, hot, all those things that are real. But we're just so pleased about it. And we put together another really good book, I think, so about her.
Yeah, and I mean, I think she was, when you're looking at this picture, the painting to the right was done in 1948. I mean, this is a painting that is very ethereal, very minimalist brushwork. And she was so bold in painting a work like that. And she had such forethought in painting a work like that. And I think that's why a lot of these women's works resonate, is because they didn't have dealers, and which during their lifetime, of course, was a huge downside. But in looking back, they didn't have dealers breathing down their neck saying, paint more works like Willem de Kooning, paint a work like Jackson Pollock.
You keep selling this. Here, paint like this. They didn't have that.
Yeah, paint more 40 by 60s in red, black, and blue. They were really able to do their own things. And the works resonate now because they're really fresh, and they have sort of this different take on abstract expressionism or color field or neo-expressionism.
Exactly into that. She was grounded in realism and the reality of the still life.
Yeah.
So, I mean, she, which may have not have been as popular at the time. So, but she stuck to course. She had a vision and she stuck to course, which I think most of these women really did. And I think that's why we feel such conviction in supporting them, is they felt strongly about their work, and we do too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, stepping into this show, I mean, one of the things that just astounded me is how advanced and sophisticated her brushwork is and her compositions. And it's just amazing that that they really haven't been hung alongside the abstract expressionists in New York that we all know.
No. And I think, a lot of times too with these women, a lot of these women were really beautiful. And people tend to just show a picture of the woman. Mary Abbott was a really stunning woman. She was a Ford model. A lot of the time, people only show the picture of Mary Abbott from her modeling days.
Yeah.
And so I think by doing that, a lot of these women's work gets lost because you think, oh, this woman just got recognition because she was beautiful. That's why they're not showing the painting. They're just showing the picture of her.
I know. Someone asked me why we didn't put Mercedes Matter picture on the wall. And I said, we don't want to do that. We're showing the art. Right. You can look in the catalog. We've got pictures. You can look at her picture all you want, but we don't need to see her picture. This says everything. This picture says everything to me.
Like why are these catalogs? Why why is the woman the cover of the catalog
Mhm.
instead of her art? I
And-
think a lot of stuff like that happened over the years to minimize their art. And I think as a result, people forgot
And
how good they
I
were.
still think the writing often is around the context, and Elaine de Kooning, how beautiful she was with the heels she was walking in.
She was married to Willem.
We have to talk about the art. We have got, I understand that we have to talk about the cool context of things, and that's great, but I think that's what our goal is, to keep showing and continuing to focus on the art, and all that other can come with it. And that's going to be more flashy. I get it. Like, that's going to sell the books and that's going to do the thing, but they wouldn't even be part of that scene if they were not making paintings like this.
Right. Right. No, that's a great point, Christine. And I appreciate, you two doing the hard legwork of finding these artists and bringing them to newer and younger generations. We're quickly approaching the end of the hour, and I want to just touch a little bit on your ownership of the gallery now. You've been doing this for 12 years, I think. And I just wonder if you could say a little something about, what you've seen change over the years and what you find exciting and hopefully not concerning, but concerning as well. What have you seen change over the years?
I'm just talking about the current state of the market. There seems to be a lot of doomsaying and naysaying going on. I think we have to remember that there are many different art markets and micro worlds in the art world. And not everybody is hosting dinners for 500. And, like, we're very successful at what we do. We're making money. We're slow and steady wins the race. And I think, I think that reporting on the art market needs to, pay attention. If the person that owns the gallery is really kind of doing it because they're rich collector owning a gallery and just decide not to have a gallery anymore, you might just want to say that instead of galleries are closing. It's not like
maybe we should talk. I don't know how many galleries there are in New York right now, but like maybe we should talk about the 600 that
are in our neighborhood.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I do think it's like, I think things have changed in that, we kind of sit on the outside a little bit. So it's funny for us to talk about what's going on in the art world, because I think that's not our strong suit, or it is our strong suit. Like, we participate in the greater art world. We do our Basel, Miami Beach. We're doing our Basel, Hong Kong. So we're there, but we're not exactly like the cool kids in that group. And we're not, smoking cigarettes at 4 a.m. doing lines. Like, it's not, I say, if we can't get the deal done before 7 o'clock, like, forget it, So but I do think that's the whole thing. The truth about the art market is that it can be steady if people trust you. And there is a world where old art school dealers that do some educating can really get younger people interested in art. And it can be done. I think we think that young people are not buying art. Young people are buying art, and they are buying through old school galleries. They just need a little bit more information in a way that is presented to them. And I think a hot party can do one thing and get you interested, but down the road, you can't be doing that all the time unless you're a certain people that have that kind of money, and you can't do 22 art fairs. I think you have to be very deliberate.
So you can do 22 art fairs in 2022, but you can't do 22 art fairs in 2025. And I think what we're missing is that when the art market pivots, you also need to pivot. And so, I think there are far more galleries out there who have stayed the course and who have remained open, and there are a few that have closed. But for the most part, you talk to dealers and it's all right. Look, if we're going to compare it to 2022, yeah, it's not 2022, but I think they're doing better than 2018 and 2019.
Yeah.
So like, let's talk about that instead.
Yeah.
Let's not compare it to the blockbuster year that was.
I think you just have to watch, like, it's hard because you want to get into like this hustle of, we balance a really fine line between what we do as sort of a medium-sized gallery. We're not going to open a gallery in LA and London and Hong Kong, but we do business in those places, and we find for us that I think the future is collaboration. So we found galleries that we collaborate with. We're about to do a show with Pauline Pavek on Janice Biala in Paris. And so you find similar-minded galleries like you, and you can team up.
Mhm.
And then you might have 12 galleries worldwide, you know? So
Or you find a bigger gallery. You know,
yeah.
we team with White Cube on Lynn Drexler. And you know, of course they basically have a gallery on every continent besides Antarctica.
Corner.
So, you know, it's, you know, you sort of pivot and you find what works for you as a gallery and then also what works for the artist in terms of their market and their story.
But I do think it's sort of holding your own. Like you talk about White Cube, I think you have to be solid. We know Lynn Drexler. We've worked with her paintings for over 15, I don't know, more than 15, maybe 20 years. So, you know, we've been talking about her for a long time. So I think it's smart that they keep us around. It's important because we kind of did the legwork. And I know it's easy to sort of, you know, shift the market and go another way, but it's been fun. That's another, I would say Lynn Drexler was sort of fun for us because her market blew up. You know, we were selling things for $45,000 and then the next thing at auction, you know, something's going for $700,000 in 3 weeks. Like that was a real crazy time. But we learned a lot about how some of the other galleries talk about art, like these terms like strategy and, you know, and it was at first I was just like, I can't do this, but I do find now there's a happy medium and I feel solid. One time we had a meeting uptown, I won't say the gallery, and we were going over like pricing structures of a particular artist, and they were basically going by square inches. Like, so this is going to be this. And then I said, oh, this painting needs to be more, this painting needs to be 500,000. And they were like, why? And I was like, it's so much better. I mean, this is like the best painting in the group. Like why? They say there's like lawyers in the room. There's all these people. Why? And literally at that moment, I was like, you know something they don't.
Yep.
You know, and I really like, it was so funny. I was so nervous about that meeting because all these big wigs there. And then I realized I know they don't know that. And they don't have whatever that confidence is. It was a wonderful day. So we've learned a lot over the years, like teaming and collaboration. I do think collaboration is the future in what we're doing for
I do
us.
too.
And before we wrap up, I just wanted to say to everybody that Mercedes Matter is on through early October. And Christine and Martha, is there anything on the horizon that you are especially excited about or want to give a call out to?
Speaking of Lynn Drexler, we are going to open a Lynn Drexler show on October the 9th, and it's a period of her work that has not been looked at very much. It's a period from the 1970s. She had a really, really difficult life. And during the 1970s, she took great solace, went to the Metropolitan Opera probably 3 times a week. And she created these drawings while she was sitting there listening to music, and then went home and painted these incredible paintings in her signature brushwork. And so her 1960s paintings are that feeling that you get when you're surrounded by nature. They're not of nature, it's the feeling you get. Her 1970s works are the feeling you get when you're surrounded by music. So there's this really stunning rhythm.
There's not synesthesia. We couldn't figure out really if that's it. But the other thing is we're going to have the Metropolitan Opera they're going to have a couple of performers do some arias here in the gallery in November. So we have to figure out the date, but we've never done like such a grand performance. There's going to be a grand piano and it's going to be beautiful.
We'll be judged on our acoustics this time.
Our acoustics, I don't know, it echoes. Isn't it like a bathroom? Isn't it good like that?
I know, exactly. Do not go into ours.
And then we'll do karaoke afterwards. Anyway.
That's really exciting. Well, I want to thank you for taking this time to talk with me. This was such a wonderful conversation, and your insights are really invaluable. And I thank you for your ethos of being research based and slow and steady wins the race. And it just pays off in a beautiful show after beautiful show. So thank you, Christine and Martha.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right, we are now going to turn to our audience Q&A. Before I do, if you have a question for Christine or Martha, there's a link in the chat where you can submit your question. But I have a few lined up here. So I'm going to start with a question from John. John says, "Hi, Christine and Martha. Thanks for doing this and what you do. Could you describe a bit of the breakdown of your client base? And do you think young generations who will inherit a lot of capital in art will be as interested in 20th century abstraction? Also, what are your thoughts on how we expand the universe of collectors who want to spend money on this type of art?"
I mean, that's, again, it's a great question. I think we're already seeing these younger collectors interested.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't think they have a problem with abstraction because, I mean, I feel like that's what they're comfortable with. Like when I was growing up, it was calendars of impressionism, and so like modern art was, kind of out there. These younger people now, modern art is what they know. Like they think the 1950s that's really old to them. But I do think abstraction sort of translates and can speak to anyone if you're open to feeling that language. So we found that we surprisingly are selling to some younger group of people, and we have a pretty good clientele now in Asia who are buying this work as well. So it's surprising and interesting. But I do wonder, like, I worry about art education. I worry about art in schools and how that's going to change things. We all do. What about AI? I don't know. I don't want to think about these things when people, I don't know.
I mean, I think some of our best collectors are in the Midwest and Texas. And you look at like the corridor of the Midwest, and they've got really, really strong, smaller museums.
Yeah.
We do not sell a lot of paintings to places like LA or Silicon Valley. And so I think it goes back to art education, whether it's taught in schools, whether it's, going on field trips to museums. It's all about seamlessly integrating it into your life so that painting shouldn't be intimidating. You should be able to come and look at a painting and figure out what it means to you. And I think it's people don't understand because they're not getting that education at a young point in their life, and they're intimidated, and because they're intimidated, they don't want to learn anymore, and so they're spending their money on cars, which you see on Instagram videos and TikTok videos, and things are nice houses. So
people that we deal with, though, I do think it's just a matter of, and the art gallery world is hard. You walk into an art gallery and nobody talks to you, right? So the difference here, you walk into this art gallery, somebody says hello to you, and if you want more information, we openly give it to you. So I think that's younger people are used to having access to information and more transparency. And I do think that is starting to happen in the art world. So I think we kind of put ourselves in that way that you can come in here and not know anything, and we're happy to talk to you and whatever your budget is. And I wish the art world was more like it, but it's the opposite. The opposite is you can't have this. This is so special. I'm not going to show you unless you're special like I am. So we literally do the opposite. So I wish everyone was sort of on our page, but there's always going to be that sort of group that has to present things in that way.
Mhm.
But it's not going to be good for younger people. They're used to information, easy.
Thank you so much for that answer. Our next question is going to come from Fong. Fong, I'll give you a chance to unmute here.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Martha. You both are cooking with gas, as they say. Just terrific to hear that, because whatever that one does in life, one have to love it, and it has to be difficult.
Mhm.
If it's difficult, the task is not that worthy doing it. It would be otherwise driven by some other means. So I think it has to be difficult. It has to be impossible in some way. So I'm happy that even showing Mercedes Matter, when she founded the New York Studio School, it was not an easy task.
Mhm.
We were very close. She was married to a much more famous person, like the way that Louise Bourgeois was married to the great Robert Goldwater. She used to be called Mrs. Goldwater until he died in 1972. Same thing with Mercedes, Herbert Matter was a lavish, elegant, I would say, graphic designer, photographer, and everything in between from the Bauhaus.
Yes.
It wasn't easy also having a father who was also very famous, author because. So that's why I was sent literally to study with her after having gone to school in Philadelphia. What's my question? Is there a question, Jess? I forgot now. Got distracted. No, it's just fantastic that
Yeah.
you're doing this.
Yeah.
Because you know what you guys doing is to preserve the memory, a history of everyone,
Yes.
you know, that been forgotten. I think that history is in the work, but also in presentation of the work.
Yeah. We
So
try
that
to, just like what you're saying, you know, we actually, I don't think we mentioned Herbert Matter. We know very well how important who he is, but that's part of also like not showing the picture of Mercedes Matter right up front, not starting the sentence with she was married to Herbert Matter.
exactly.
We could say this with Dorothy Daner was married to David Smith. Dorothy Daner was a fabulous artist and sculptor herself. So we know those, but we've also learned how in our presentation to talk about it. And we always slide in Herbert Matter because it's important, their life, who they knew and where they were hanging. But
Yes.
thank you, Fong, for this. We're
Yeah,
so thrilled for including us in this.
Yeah,
It's really
thank
been
you.
fun.
Well, it's a footnote. It's an important footnote, but you're right. You don't need to elevate that into a highlight the ways that George Eliot had to change her name to a man name in order to publish her work. She was living with Herbert Spencer, you know, much more famous than she was. So these are predicaments that women have to face all the time. Just happy that you're doing it the way you have. One tricky question. You know how someone like myself walk into a gallery like a Gauguin or Petzo or Pace, they always send the director right away, immediately, because the receptionists are trained to identify who and who come in and go in. Have you guys need to do that yet, or not? That's important.
We do. I mean, we're not as regimented, like nobody gets hurt if you miss somebody.
Okay.
But you know,
We may shake our head at the
kind of like, oh God, we just missed
again.
Oh my God. Okay. No, Jess is laughing because I'm sure she's facing it at that now, you know.
There's so many people to know. Also, I would just say, you know, our staff is fabulous. They're our great team. We literally have 4 people. We have a big gallery. We do a lot of things. There are 4 people that work very hard for us. We're so grateful for them. And Nico, who works the front desk, who is beloved by everybody, does his damnedest to recognize as many people as he can. So he's getting there. He's 22. Give him a little time. So
yeah. Well, that's how Michael opened and talks about you with similar light. Ethic, work ethic, commitment, and I'm just happy to have met you through Michael and now Martha. So, well, congratulations, you guys. I have to go off to a meeting.
Okay, thank you for being with us.
Yeah, thank you for everything.
Thank you. Can't wait to come in and see the show too.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Back to you, Josh.
Thank you so much for that response and for that question, Fong. Our next question is going to come from Charlie. You should be able to unmute now.
All right.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks, Jess. Thanks, Christine and Martha. I'd follow Fong in saying what a tremendous conversation it's been to listen to. And I'll even go as far as say as an inspiration in my day.
Thanks.
One of the things you touched briefly on, and I was curious to see if there was a specific story that you might share with us, was the COVID closures. I know that you didn't pivot to private sales as people expected, but I'm curious if there's any good stories that you can tell from community.
I mean, we were scared. I mean, we were scared.
We were terrified.
We just gotten really going, you know, like hitting our stride. I mean, feeling good. And then we were about to open our Ida Kohlmeyer show, which was sort of anticipated. It was this work of 60s works that had never been seen. And all of New Orleans was like driving up, and slowly but surely I'm calling and saying, I'm not sure you should come up. And, you know, like everybody, we weren't sure we were going to live or what. But at that time, we were mostly upset that people weren't going to see this Ida Kohlmeyer show. But we get this call from Roberta Smith from the New York Times. And she said, I don't know what we're doing. We're not going to be able to write. I've never written a review of a show I haven't seen, but I really like this work. And tell me more about it. So we talk more. I send her the images. I send her the installation shots. And she says, I'm going to do this thing that's it was basically 3 gallery shows you'll never see or something like
No, it's 3 gallery shows you should see virtually.
Virtually. Okay. I felt like it was you'll never see.
Which
That's
basically meant, yeah, virtually.
So that was a fabulous, oh, thank goodness. Thank goodness. And everyone was reading the New York Times that week because it was shutting down. So everyone read that review, and we basically sold most of the show without people seeing it. So that was hugely helpful. I'm so grateful. But I do remember saying to her, I don't know how we're going to get through this. And she said, well, Pace is doing all these online viewing rooms. And I said, but what do you mean? How do you do it online? I don't even know what that is. I'm trying to get her. And she was basically hung up on me, good luck, but we figured out what.
Yeah, I have to say, if you guys can't tell by this conversation, Christine is our Barbara Walters. So she's great on camera. So basically what we did was we just threw Christine in front of a painting. I think Christine went down to the gallery, which she was not supposed to do, with a tripod.
There's nobody there. There was nobody there.
Set up a tripod, and we just got her in front of the camera talking about paintings, and we would post it online, and we would sell the paintings. It was a great lesson. I think you get so stuck in the minutia of every day and the formula of every day. And it was a great lesson and innovation.
We actually had a meeting and said, how do we sell paintings? And we actually had to go through and think. And it was oh, I think people like me. And I think people like what I say. So then it was okay, but I will say those videos, there is a little sadness to me when you find them, because I was scared, so it's funny because I am a perky person and I'm perky there, but I can see that I was nervous. They're a little serious.
Well, yeah, because you're walking down 10th Avenue and not a soul around you and going into an empty gallery. It was weird.
And we had a wonderful mailman, which he is still on our Instagram, Mike the mailman, we texted and he would bring me the mail. It's these small things at that time, right? No one thinks about it. You still have to pay your bills. We were in a related building at that time. They owned Hudson Yards. You think they were working with us on rent?
Yeah.
No, what they said? Christine, you and Martha have always paid your rent on time. We believe your business is solid and you're going to be just fine.
Yeah.
And
I know they're like, well, we can delay your rent for 3 months, but then you're just going to owe us 3 months at one time. And we're like, oh,
so you can pay us in January or something. And I was like, January?
So we're going to owe you a massive, no, thank you. We'll
it was, I think video was an important pivot that we learned. That video, we did not utilize. How funny is it now that we say that? Because we do Instagram reels, but at that time it was installation shots and detailed shots. And it became video of just standing in front of the painting talking, or filming a video of the show so people could see it.
And we still use that to this day. We were very casual about doing installation shots on all of our paintings. And now we're religious about that. That's thanks to COVID. So there were, it's not like I would ever want to go back to where we were, but there were some good things that came out of it.
No, thank you so much for sharing those stories. And I can completely relate to the different energy that people brought to the screens in March of 2020. When we started this program, I remember the questions were more like, are you okay? Or
family okay.
It was a different world.
But, I will say one time I was at the so we would come in on opposite days, we would, and for me, this is my life. I come to work. So that was a weird mental thing for me. What? I'm supposed to work out all day or drink all day. One of the two, I don't know which. Sometimes both. But, I would come into the gallery and I remember the phone rang, not my cell phone. I answered the phone. I was like, do I say Berry Campbell? This is Christine. But I answered the phone. It was one of my clients who was like, I'm out at my house in the Hamptons. I'm sitting in my dining room and I cannot stand the painting I'm looking at. I'm on your website. Do you have XYZ? And I was like, huh, well, yes, we do. And at that moment, I was like, I think this is going to be okay. And then the other thing that we did, which I hope we don't have a lot of clients watching, but if we had a client in Chicago who emailed and said, I really like this painting, but, I'm not going to be able to see it. And I'd say, oh, where are you? You're in Chicago? Oh my gosh, we actually have a truck going to Chicago next week.
Yeah.
So, and they'd say, you do? And I said, actually, we do, because we have to deliver, blah, blah. Well, I'll just deliver the painting to your house. And 9 out of 10 times we sold the painting, because if they liked it online, we figured that, I hope no one holds that against me now. We had trucks going all over this country.
Yeah, exactly.
But it also kept our local trucker in business. Just to say, who didn't have any work with all the galleries, he was very happy to have a job and stand 10 feet away and go to Florida or wherever he went.
Oh, it makes me so happy to hear those stories. Thank you for sharing them.
Thank you so much for that. We'll do one more question from the audience before we turn to our reading. This question comes from Susie in the audience. Susie says, with Lynn Drexler now featured at Phillips and reaching an international stage through exhibitions such as White Cube, what does it mean to you to see her estate and legacy ascend to these new levels of recognition? Same question goes for any of your other artists that you represent.
I mean, I think it's gratifying.
I mean, my heart pitter patters. Like, she would be thrilled. I feel like these artists are with us, and it's like we get really great joy and pleasure knowing that her work is ascended to this.
You think about the story that Christine told about the Charlotte Park show we did back in 2015. We think, oh my God, we're going to do this show and nobody's ever going to see that. There were so many shows between 2013 and 2017 that we had like that. So to see an artist reach an international stage like that, it's what we hoped, it's what we wanted, it's what the artist would want, it's what their friends would want. So, it's fantastic.
She did not have that success in her lifetime like some of the others, but she painted every single day of her life. And I will say this to what Fuang said, is that her husband, John Holtberg, was really way more famous than her. He was actually one of the top artists at the time, showing with Martha Jackson Gallery. It was all about him, but she kept making, that's the thing, she kept making. So feel like it's all the right thing. We really do feel like good energy and good spirit here. And it's not only Lynn Drexler is just the extreme example, wonderful example, but even getting Nanette Carter having the solo show at the Wexner Museum, this brings us great joy. Like it is, every single milestone is, we're happy that we have good news every day here, whatever it is, there's good news. Every little step is something wonderful. Putting a work of art in a good collection, getting an artist their first museum show, all of it is just incredible. So we really, I think in the beginning we were hustling so hard with the business that we didn't maybe celebrate as much as we should. And now we stop and smell the roses.
I know. And I remember having dinner we were with somebody in Miami, and they were like, oh, you did really well at the Miami show. You should have a glass of champagne to celebrate. And we're like, wait, no, like we don't do that. So, but
it was like, right, we should take a moment to celebrate.
Yeah, exactly.
But we do now, because we, but I think that's it. We're hardworking, regardless, we're hardworking. So.
Alrighty, thank you so much for sharing all of that and sharing so many great stories and insights. And with that, today we will end our program with a poetry reading. And so, Jessica, I'll give you the floor.
Okay. Thanks, Joshua. So we have selected a poem written by Alice Baber, who is also one of the artists at Berry Campbell. And I will, without further ado, read you her words. Hot breathing, ice has worn its rivering way in sheets of colors speckled with salt snow. As purple heaps the space of rocky go, dark lanterns move and shift, light blow by blow. Frozen 3 times as moving icy snails have crept and fallen in the changing fold, breathing the teeth of horns in aggregate. The marble gaps its mass of silty weight. Cross over, one step, at this open hour. Step 2, brown earth, soft wind, reflower. Thank you.
Thanks, Jess.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for that. Thank you, Christine, Martha, and Jessica. Thank you, Nico from Berry Campbell, for their support in preparing for today's event. We'd also like to thank the Terra Foundation for American Art for sponsoring our NSE program and making these daily conversations possible, and for their support of our growing archive, which you can view on the Rails YouTube channel. The Rail has been free and independent for 24 years. A donation directly supports our writers, production staff, and operations. Support our work through the link in the chat. And if you're available, join us tomorrow at 1 p.m. for a conversation with Coco Fusco and Zoe Hopkins on the event of Tomorrow I Will Become an Island at El Museo del Barrio. And as is Rail tradition, as you leave, feel free to unmute yourself and say goodbye and hello.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Martha,
much.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
This was
very much.
fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Really
Wonderful.
appreciate
Everybody.
your
Thanks, Paul.
passion and your direction.
Thank
Just
you.
amazing. Thank you so much.
Hey, everybody. Bye. Thanks so
Bye.
much.
Bye, everyone.
Hey.
Hi, everyone.
Bye.